Yo, what's up guys? Josh, Magic Heart Poker here. Back at Resorts World, so I was actually contemplating going to the Win instead, but I saw two tables are running here and I want to get some redemption from last night. As you guys saw, it was a very brutal night. Lesson learned to never drink alcohol while playing again. I just felt like I was way too loosey-goosey, aggressive, like bluffing in the wrong spots. Semi-bluffs not hitting, and yeah, I just want to redeem myself, play for maybe 4 hours here, and then if the game is good, I'll stay. If the game is bad, then I'll go over to the Win. I feel like the last 3 sessions, I felt myself getting too loose and gambly, so just want to return back to the fundamentals this session where, you know, we're playing tight, playing right, and playing in position.
So in the first hand of the session, the low jack, hijack, cutoff, and button all limp, and then the small blind bumps it up, but only to $11. And I look down at 3-2 suited on the big blind, seeing that there's a number of limpers, so assuming this is gonna go multi-way. And with suited connectors, although the worst ones, I still elect to make the call for $8 more, and all the limpers come along. Flop comes 5 ace jack with 2 hearts, so we flop a gut shot. When the small blind bets $30, I actually make the call here, planning on evaluating the turn as well as making a move if needed if I miss my draw. But I just figured since the small blind's pretty deep, she has me covered and I have around $350, that this call could be profitable. Fortunately, all the other players behind me get out of the way. Looking back, there was a short stack behind me, so it would have put me in an awkward spot. Although he only had like $35 or $40, so it wouldn't really change too much. But that's just something I need to keep in mind flat calling in a multi-way pot when I'm out of position. Turn is the 4 of clubs, which is the best card in the deck since it gives us a straight and it doesn't complete the hard draw. So when the small blind bets $50, I'm just trying to get some money in the pot and not trying to slow play this because there's a hard draw out there. So I go ahead and bump it up to $120. And then the small blind thinks for a while and then makes the fold. So glad to take the pot down here, as a lot of cards in the river could have killed the action. And after this hand happened, I was thinking like, oh, maybe I should have just flat called the turn and then raised on the river, assuming a clean river. But looking back at this clip a month later, I feel like I made the right play here. So happy to take this pot down. In the next notable hand, the low jack opens to $10, which is a pretty small raise size in the 1-3 streets of Resorts World. The cutoff, who's the same lady who I played against last hand, calls, and then I go ahead and call from the button with 4-3 of hearts, and both of the blinds get out of the way. Flop comes 4-7-8, 2 hearts, so we flop bottom pair and a flush draw. The low jack original raiser checks. The cutoff lady now bets $25. And then I go ahead and just flat call here, looking to see what the turn brings while the low jack gets out of the way. The turn comes at 5 of hearts, exactly what we want, which is the flush draw. So when the cutoff bets $50, I actually just flat call here. In hindsight, it would have probably been better just to raise since she could have had 1 heart in her hand and I want to charge that. But in the moment, I just flat call. And the river comes in ace of diamonds. So when the cutoff checks now, I go ahead and bet $90 since this is a pretty clean river. I'm really only losing to any bigger flush here, which I don't really think she has. And the cutoff thinks about it and makes the call. She shows 9-6 diamonds for the turn straight, and we take this one down. The lady actually shortly packed up her bags and left after this hand. She was big stack when I sat down, and then she gave me some money, but still left, I'm assuming up, if she was only in for 1 buy-in. I think that's actually a really smart strategy because there's been plenty of times where I'm up on a session and then I take a few beats, but then stick it out and then start playing worse. And then it ends up being a much longer session than intended. So I feel like for me personally, learning when to walk away is actually a skill in it itself. And you can argue that poker is one long marathon session, but if the previous hand is impacting your tilt factor or your emotions, then I think it's best just to pack it up and then try again when you're fresh in a new session. So at this point, I was actually playing pretty well this session. I was up around $250 after just an hour or like an hour and a half until this hand happens. So the low jack limps. I go ahead and limp from the hijack with queen jack of diamonds. The cutoff limps as well. The button now bumps it up to $15. The small blind gets out of the way. However, the big blind, low jack, myself, and the cutoff all call the raise. Flop comes 9-5-8 with a spade draw on board, and the action checks around. The turn is a 9 of clubs, now pairing the board. The big blind now bets $15. The low jack gets out of the way. I call with a gut shot straight draw and 2 overs, and the cutoff and button get out of the way. The river is an 8 of diamonds, now bringing a paired board, and the big blind slows down and checks. And in the moment, I just saw this check as a sign of weakness, so I bet $65, which is around a 2/3 size pot bet. And the big blind quickly calls, showing queen 8 suited for the lower full house. So he's really only losing to any 9 here. And yeah, we lose this one. I really don't like my line here. I think I ran this play by Coach Arrow, and I'm pretty sure if I want to bluff, I need to start initiating the betting earlier, like let's say the flop, because when I check the flop and then only flat call the turn, it doesn't look too strong. It just looks like a value bet. And if I did have a 9 in this instance, I probably would have bet on the flop as well as potentially raised on the turn depending on like what I had, but definitely would have bet on the flop. So this just was a really bad bluff attempt. And also it's a bad habit of mine to just try to steal on the river. As you guys saw in the previous vlog, I tried to do the exact same play. Although I was a pre-flop aggressor, I had like suited king and pretty much like the action checked all the way through the river and I tried to steal the pot. So yeah, this was not a good bluff attempt. I think if I wanted to make this attempt, I should have overbet as well, because then it would have really repped the 9. This sizing just made it seem like, you know, I'm just trying to like value bet bluff, but honestly, I found that overbet bluffing works better than value bet bluffing, especially on the river. So yeah, we lose this pot and then we're down a bit on the session. All right, so in this hand, we have a double board bomb pot. If you guys aren't familiar with the bomb pot, it's basically when you put in a set amount of money, in this case $10, and then everyone just goes to the flop with 2 random cards. So it's pretty popular at Resorts World to do a bomb pot whenever the dealer changes. And yeah, I would say like it is more gambling. The expected value, or like I guess upside of the bomb pot, is if you're playing against someone that doesn't really understand how that works, or doesn't really know, I guess, like hand strengths that well, then you can actually get paid off when you have a nutted hand. So this hand is actually an example of this happening. At this point, I was actually down on the session. As you guys saw, I started out really hot, up like 250 within an hour and a half, and then after that bluff, I kind of just collapsed a little bit, started playing a bit too many hands, not hitting the flops, etc. So I think I was down like 100 or 200, maybe even 300. I have to look at the graph until this hand happened. So I didn't start recording until the river, and pretty much, as you see, I have 7-4 suited. On the top board, I have quads. And then on the bottom board, I have a straight, although not the nut straight, but like the dummy end, and there's a club draw out there. So what happens is I actually overbet on the pot. The pot's around $227. And when the same guy from last hand, who was actually a pretty solid player, he didn't do anything too crazy. When he checked to me, I went ahead and just went all in for 368. Really just trying to get him off of the chop in case he had clubs. So I knew I had one board locked up, which meant that like the worst that could happen is I split the pot and we just go 50-50. Now this guy goes into the tank, right? He goes into the tank for like, I think 3 minutes or so before making the call. And he had pocket jacks. So we actually scooped this pot. It was a pretty insane pot because it ended up being like around $1,000 and out of nowhere, because this guy was like pretty tight. He didn't make any massive blunders in no limit hold'em, but then in this one hand, he pretty much just like punted off his stack. And then shortly after, this game actually switched to like a double board PLO bomb pot game. It was like completely degenerate. Like, yeah, it just turned into like degenerate fest. And I should have just left after this hand, to be honest. I would have been up like 300 bucks or something, because after that, I started dwindling my stack, and then I actually got it back up again to the peak when I should have left a second time, but then I ended up staying, and you know, a guy who's like a PLO pro sat down, as well as another tournament player, and then yeah, I ended up losing a few big hands. And then I would have left up $50 on the session, but then Mario, the guy who advocated for this game, he's the dealer from the win, who is in a few episodes where he beats me because I misplay my hand. We do a $50 flip, he wins it, so then I'm even, and then we run it back, and then I lose, so then I'm actually down $50 on the session. So could have been a winning session, but then ended up being a losing session, and then I think that's what contributed to what's about to unfold for the rest of this vlog.
All right, so we just wrapped up our session at Resorts World. Yeah, it got kind of derailed. So the same guy who I took shots with yesterday and drank alcohol and learned the expensive lesson of never to drink and play poker, he made the game go into like a bomb pot game and then eventually a double board PLO bomb pot. So I was stuck $150 from hold'em. Then when we started playing the random games, I went up to plus 400 and then slowly lost some of my stack as the night went on. And I could have left, you know, profiting around $85 or so, but then this same guy, like, I just did like 2 flips for double board PLO and lost both of them. So $250 flips. So we ended up down $18 on the night. So yeah, I think the main thing for me is I need to just not play with this dealer, because I feel like it just makes it way too degen and I'm not focusing on the grinder's journey. Kind of reminds me of like Rampage Poker. I feel like I've seen his vlogs where, He just does these like random ass flips with people at the end of the night. But yeah, I think I'm gonna head over to the Win, just because I felt like I didn't actually play a ton of, no limit, like 1-3. So I might play for a couple hours. Right now it's around 6 a.m. So there's one table going. So yeah, let's head over to the Win and then see how it goes.
A few moments later.
All right, guys, quick change of plans. So we're currently headed to the Orleans since we just checked out the Win and the poker room was completely dead. There was no 1-3 games going and just 1-2-5 game. But there's a list, and also I don't want to play 2-5 until I am profitable at 1-3 and beating the game. So yeah, gonna check out the Orleans. Haven't played there in a while, probably like 2 years or so. And hopefully, it's not just OMC Central, because it is like 6:15 a.m. when most old man coffees do wake up. So we'll just check it out, just because I felt like the last couple hours of poker were just complete degeneracy. It wasn't actually poker, it was just gambling. So I just want to get some hours in playing profitable poker. So yeah, gonna head on into the Orleans.
All right, so in the first notable hand in session number 2 of the night, which is actually in the morning since it's 7:42 a.m. I haven't slept yet. Should have went home and slept instead of went to the casino. Coach Arrow actually told me to go back and stop being a DEGEN, but I didn't listen. And you guys will see that it might or might not pay off. Gotta keep watching the video. So in this first hand, the under the gun limps, the button bumps it up to $11. I look down at King 10 suited in the small blind. I go ahead and make the call. The big blind gets out of the way, and the under the gun limper also comes along. So we flop a flush draw, as well as 2 overcards. However, we go ahead and check, because we're out of position. Under the gun checks as well, and the button c-bets for $15, and both me and the under the gun player come along. The turn is a queen of spades, giving us the flush. However, I go ahead and check, and the under the gun checks as well. The button bets $20, and I just flat call, intending to make a river play, and the under the gun makes the fold. The river is a king of diamonds, and I go ahead and check, planning on check raising. However, the button checks back, and he shows pocket aces with actually the ace of spades, so this was potentially a really bad situation. Totally misplayed this hand. First off, I should not be just flat calling on the turn, especially avoiding a situation like this where he had the ace of spades and he would have definitely made the call. So I should have bumped it up on the turn, and then I should have led the river because I missed out on value. And yeah, I totally misplayed this hand, especially since he raised to $11 with aces, and this was like an old man. The Orleans composition was weird, right? At 7 in the morning, it was basically like OMCs mixed with like kind of DEGEN gamblers, I guess. No one was too degenerate. When I first sat down, there was actually this like Indian guy who had like a 3 or 4K stack. And apparently he's like the Orleans whale, according to my full-time friend. But yeah, he was only like kind of crazier guy, but he left as soon as I sat down. And then, yeah, we take this pot down, but really don't like how I played it. The next notable hand, I have the button straddle on for whatever reason. I believe I was just in a gambling mood since I came off a session where it was literally a bomb pot game. So anyways, I have the button straddle on for $6, the cutoff calls, the small blind folds, and the big blind now raises to $21. The cutoff, who originally just called the $6, makes the call, and then I look down at king queen offsuit and defend my straddle. Flop comes 7-10 jack with 2 hearts, so we flop an open ender. The action checks over to me, and I go ahead and bet $45, which is like 2/3 size pot bet, and only the big blind makes the call. The turn is now an 8 of hearts, giving us the second nut flush draw to go along with our open ender. So when the big blind checks to me, I go ahead and bet $70, which is half pot, and then he gets out of the way and folds. So pretty happy with how I played this hand. I don't think I did any major blunders here. However, one thing to note is the guy in the big blind is going to be relevant for the next 2 hands, which take a turn for better or worse. All right, so in this next hand, I have the button straddle on again for $6. The cutoff raises to $21, who's this guy, like an older gentleman. He wasn't an OMC, he was actually like, definitely like not the best player, playing a lot of hands, and I felt like playing them kind of incorrectly. Go ahead and make the call with 10-4 suited on the button, and then the small blind gets out of the way. The big blind now raises to $67, so this is the same opponent from the previous hand. Actually, he was involved in the previous 2 hands. The best way I could describe this guy was he was definitely like loose aggressive, like to see a lot of flops, and then like bet massive. He would always bet and then say like area 51 or like something related to the number, or like Michael Jordan 23 or whatever, you know. He was like one of those kind of characters. I remember the king queen hand when he folded, he was like, I'll let you have this one or whatever from the previous notable hand. And yeah, he raises to $67, the cutoff, and I both make the call. The flop comes 310 king with the diamond draw on board. The original 3-better now shoves for $165. The cutoff goes all in for less for $110, and I just make the fold with middle pair. However, the turn actually came to 4 of clubs and the river is a 9 of hearts. The big blind 3-better showed ace king offsuit, and the original raiser showed pocket eights. So I actually would have taken this hand down, and for whatever reason, this hand like tilted the shit out of me. I don't know why. I think it's entitlement till like, oh, I deserve to win the pot since I saw the run out and I had the best hand. However, I ran this hand by Coach Arrow. Like, first off, he tells me not to straddle. So yeah, I didn't listen to him there. He also said I shouldn't call the raise with 10-4 suited, which is a garbage hand, just fold pre-flop. And I should definitely not be calling a 3-bet with 10-4 suited. So I made a bunch of blunders pre-flop, and then on the flop, I think I made the correct fold, but for whatever reason, I just became super results oriented because I was thinking like, oh, this pot's mine, you know, I deserved it because I had the best hand, and I made a bad fold. But it was actually the right fold, you know, ignoring the bad pre-flop play. So, yep, we lose this one, which honestly, if I won this pot, I could have just left up like a few $100s within less than 2 hours. But on to the next hand. So this next hand is why you don't play an almost 7-hour session that was degenerate, just bomb pots, and then go play a regular no limit session, because you start getting tilted easily by something such as the previous hand, and then play a hand like this. So I'm on the button and look down at 3-2 suited. So I go ahead and open to $15. The same guy from the last hand 3-bets me to $50, and I go ahead and make the call. The flop seems good for me. It's 7-8-7, but with 2 spades, and I have 3-2 of spades. So it gives me a flush draw. The big blind continuation bets for $105, so slightly over pot, and I just snap call. The turn is an 8 of hearts, and he now slows down. I go ahead and just jam for my remaining $250, and he makes the call. The river is the 9 of hearts, not really changing much. Honestly, I'm playing the board now. And he shows ace 10 of spades for the better flush draw. I was basically drawing to a chop if a 7 or 8 hit. So yeah, this guy was so happy. I actually didn't have footage of this hand, so you see this, like, I was actually charging my Ray-Bans when this happened, so that's why you see this footage. But this guy was like super happy. I totally misplayed this hand and lost my buy-in, so I had to rebuy after this. And yeah, this was just like a really bad play. But the reason I want to show you guys is because I think the purpose of this channel for me is to just hold myself accountable for bad plays and to show you guys like the difference in play when you're tilted versus not tilted. I think the difficult part of poker is actually not the skill part, but it's the psychology. Coach Arrow says that poker is 30% math, 70% psychology. Psychology involves like, you know, hand reading, knowing where you're at, making adjustments, but I would argue that it also involves controlling your tilt. What I should have done is I should have left after that 10-4 suited hand on the previous occasion, because I only would have been down like $100 or $200. But because of this hand, I was down a full buy-in of $500. And I ended up rebuying and started playing even worse, which can be summed up by this final hand where I'm in a limp pot as the under the gun limps. I look down at 9-7 suited on the small blind, so I make the call. The big blind, who's an Asian lady that just sat down, raises to $18. Under the gun gets out of the way, and I make the call. The flop comes 10-10-6 with a spade draw on board, so I have a gut shot. I check. The lady continues for $30, and I make the call with my gut shot. The turn is now a 9 of clubs, so it doesn't really change much. So I go ahead and check. The lady now down bets to $15, and for whatever reason, I just felt this was weakness, so I raised to $45, and she makes the call. The river is a 5 of hearts, so we don't hit our gut shot, obviously, and I bet $120. And now this lady like goes into the tank, like tanking forever, and she's like, oh, you really have the 10? And then just fucking shoves in my face and just puts me all in, and I make the fold face up. Like at this point, my brain wasn't functioning and I wasn't thinking. I should have just mucked my cards to save any ounce of dignity I had left. But yeah, I fold face up, then immediately just take the remainder of my chips and walk out of the casino, which is something I should have done after the 10-4 suited hand. So yeah, this session kind of just highlights like how easy it is to punt off money. I would consider this a punt, especially you know, after the 10-4 suited hand. And I ended up basically just punting off like almost 2 buy-ins, like $970. And yeah, not proud of this day. You know, not only did I not have fun playing this session, I was like way too tired and should have just went home to go to sleep. I was in the fucking Orleans at 9 a.m. pulling an all-nighter, which is like the most disgusting casino. I'm around like people that are, you know, this one guy keeps like talking about like, you know, his life story, and then every time he raises, he says something like, oh, Area 51. Like, you know, every part of this night or morning was just suboptimal. Like, I wasn't having fun. I was playing like shit. I was just punting money and donating to other people. And I was paying more rake because there's like the jackpot rake. So yeah, this was not a good session, but I'm posting it because the whole point of this journey, right, is to just show you guys the ups and downs of being a grinder and not a pro yet.
Oh man, that was a brutal session, guys. I honestly should have just went home instead of going to the Orleans after playing like 7 hours of poker. Honestly, the session started out fine for the first hour and 15 minutes. And then I got myself into some trouble with the straddle, calling a big 3-bet to this loose guy. And then I got super tilted when the guy shoved. Another guy called, and I should have just called since I called the big 3-bet. And I would have turned 2-pair and then took on that pot. But yeah, I think that's too result oriented. I feel like I should have just folded off, obviously, the 10-4 suited to the raise even. But I was on the straddle and then defended it and then got 3-bet. So that hand really just tilted me. And then the 2-3 suited hand, I should have folded to his 3-bet. Honestly, that's not even an open. I think I just got impatient after it got tilted. And then, yeah, at the very end, I was just like playing way too loose and then tried to run a massive bluff, which didn't work. So yeah, I think I definitely need to cap my sessions to no longer than 6 hours. I feel like probably 4 hours is Coach Arrow's rule of thumb. And yeah, right now I'm just not playing my A game. I'm not sure. I think today I was playing okay, but then I started playing the like degenerate games, and then I feel like I need to reset after that happens. So yeah, guys, this is just the reality of poker. You know, it's not about whether or not you know how to play. It's about, can you play the right way consistently each and every time? And clearly I'm not there yet. You know, I feel like maybe because I was running so well, I just got super cocky. But yeah, I mean, I think this is just like a good wake-up call for me, and it makes the journey a little more interesting, I guess, just because there's ups and downs. Clearly I'm going through a downswing, but it's really just a matter of me playing like shit, playing too loose, too aggressive, trying to bluff too often. So yeah, I'm gonna head back, get some rest, and then hopefully tomorrow's a new day and I can play better.